Hello and welcome to CANNAMAntv. My name is Conor McLeod, and in this interview I speak with cannabis advocate, herbalist and medicinal consumer, Sarah Godfrey. In this interview we discuss Sarah's background and first interactions with cannabis, medical conditions and the impact cannabis has on reducing symptoms, the UK medical cannabis structure, cannabinoid profiles and the importance of finding the correct cannabinoid ratio, and global cannabis changes and the importance of an educated public. Make sure to like and subscribe, and join me on Patreon, where you could help to build a stronger cannabis media platform for £3 a month. Now then, let's talk cannabis. Sarah.
Hiya, Connor, I made it.
Excellent. Delighted to see you.
Yeah,
sorry about that.
You too. How's it going?
It's going brilliantly. I'll be honest. I've obviously interviewed Tommy Chong. I'm way more excited to be talking to you than talking to him. It's so funny.
Wow, that's quite a bloody compliment, isn't it? I'm well impressed. Thanks.
Honestly,
yeah, thanks. That's well, I'm excited to talk to you too, having watched CANNAMAN, and I did watch your interview with Simpa Carter.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's interesting.
What do you think?
I totally agree about all the political parties should be grey. It is an illusion of choice. It's really frustrating.
yeah, definitely. That was a bit of a win when I was in class that day, and I just popped into my head. I was like, just this tribal connection we have to most things, and I was like, I wonder how that transfers over. It's like a Man City, so then I'll go Conservative, Liverpool, Labour, that kind of thing. But yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, no, it's exactly the same. You're right. Whether it's Manchester United or Labour Party, people have these allegiances that may not be based in fact.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. And it's bizarre because I think sometimes the media machine plays on that. It uses, like, I'm a big fan of obviously Noam Chomsky, and he's got a great I think it was back in the 70s when it's like the 5 filters of the mainstream machine. And it's essentially when the filter period in order to give disillusion to the individuals that are consuming the product. That's what the news is, essentially. It's a product.
Yeah, totally. It's well crafted as well. I've just got to let my cat in. Hang on.
Oh, why then? On you go.
She has to be here. Come on then. Come on. Oh, yeah. She's like my little familiar.
Yeah, quite right. It's funny actually. My mum, I had my mum's cat for a very, very brief period. Like, I was supposed to have her overnight for a couple of days, and within the first, she was here for a couple of hours, and I couldn't go to the toilet. She was jumping at me. I was like, I had to say to my sister, you have to come and take this thing. I've got a wild animal in my house.
Yeah, they are demanding sometimes, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's funny.
Not as much as a kid, though. I haven't got kids. You've got a son, haven't you? But
I have indeed. I just dropped him up the road actually just half an hour ago.
Oh, wicked. How old is he?
He's 8. He's 9 in March. So yeah, he's an absolute cracker. I'll be honest, he's actually the motivation for most of this. This evolved over time as a consequence of me trying to create essentially a brighter future for him. So the way I see it is, like, you have the opportunity to be stuck in a relatively dead-end job, or try and break out the mold and do something relatively extraordinary. And then if you can tie it in with cultural changes, then you might be able to do something extraordinary. And that's why cannabis, the CANNAMAN, like, what's going on, I would say the CANNAMAN entity of the character really came about after I was doing children's books for him. So I was creating the books, and then it just, as I just kept working, it's like I've got a real love for craft and how you I mean, it's, yeah, I'll be honest, Sarah, I really don't want to do much talking. I want to hear you. So yeah,
no, I'm enjoying it.
Good.
I like drawing. I used to draw a lot myself, and I'm getting back into it now that I'm
excellent.
Well enough for the first time in nearly 30 years.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, that's what kind of drawing do you do?
Before I got ill, I did mainly watercolors.
Right.
But I got really annoyed with my painting because it was so painstaking. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I was one of these, like, I'd just go totally OCD and spend hours and hours and hours perfecting. Like, I'd end up drawing individual eyelashes and hairs on the horse's face, and I got frustrated with it, and then I had to give it up because I got ill. And now I've started drawing again through art therapy. A friend of mine does this art therapy group that she calls conscious doodling.
Excellent. I like that.
And it's more of an abstract thing, and it's kind of trying to free up, so there's no expectation of I don't know. It's trying to get it away from. It's just basically trying to do it as a meditation.
Yeah, just catharsis.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. That sounds something that I'd probably be up for, quite honestly.
Very
But
therapeutic. Yeah, I've got right into meditation over the last 8 years, and then I go in and out of it, but I had a break from it, and I've got right back into it in the last year, really.
yeah, meditation's extraordinary. Like that's the way the brain change. Like that's one of the things I find most fascinating. Like my brother, he does. He's finishing up his PhD in chemistry. So we have very. I mean, we're yin and yang. I'm very metaphysical. He's very empirical. And meditation, just so I can kind of get him on board with to take away from the metaphysical element of spiritual development. I was like, look, if you look at the science, individuals that meditate actually have an increase in grey matter in their brain as a consequence of that. And that's a fascinating thing by what you would ordinarily think is just sitting still, really, but it has a physical impact on the brain.
Yeah, I followed Dr. Joe Dispenza. I bought his book, or rather, I was given it by a friend or lent it, called Becoming Supernatural. And
Right.
he backs up everything, all his meditations and breathing exercises and visualizations. Everything is backed up by science because he has these, he gets blood tests and brain scans and heart monitors done on. He does great big conferences where they do these tests on loads of different people, and he's been doing it for a long time, and the evidence is undeniable.
Yeah, I really like that, dude. I'm actually, what's his book called?
Becoming Supernatural. I highly recommend it. Dr. Joe Dispenza. I reached a point last year where I started practicing the meditations.
Right.
There's one called the blessings of the chakras, the energy centers, and there's also another one which you do after that, and it's to do with basically discharging stored energy from the bottom 3 chakras and sort of like widening and strengthening your pranic tube. And I got right into that last year, and I had a kind of out of body experience while I was doing it. But I'll be honest with you, I kind of shut it down because I started to leave my body and I got scared and shut it down. And now I'm in a much better place, and I'm just trying to get back into that now and have the out of body experience. And this
Yeah.
time not shut it down from fear and just go with it.
That is fascinating. So before we get cracking on your story, describe that. I mean,
Yes, sorry.
no, this is perfect, Sarah, but that's fascinating. So let's cover that first. Talk me through that process. What happened?
Well, I've had a lot of out of body experience and near death experiences. I nearly died 3 times from Crohn's and once from a near fatal car crash in my life. And I've had a lot of out of body experiences, but this one was different because I instigated it.
Yeah.
And it happened from this breathing, and it's in particular in the book in Joe Dispenza, it's about releasing stored energy from the bottom 3 chakras. Stored energy meaning guilt, shame, anger, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was doing the breathing exercises, bear in mind I'd eaten a lot of hash and oil before it, so I was already in a good place. And the breathing exercises just made me feel amazing. I started to rush and just feel incredible. All my chakras were tingling. My crown chakra felt like it was just wide open, and then I started rushing more intensively, like I was about to literally leave the bed and fly off into space. And that was when I stopped it because I wasn't feeling well. I just got scared, to be honest, because it was about a year after I'd nearly died for the 3rd time from Crohn's disease.
Right.
My health was extremely fragile. My physical and mental health was pretty fragile. I'm in a much stronger place now. I've put on weight and muscle. I feel, touch wood, I'm in the best place I've been.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm
Years.
holding very tightly onto this table here.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. So I feel like I could do that again, but this time when I get the intense rushing and I feel like I'm going to fly, literally fly off the bed, out of my body, up into the air. This time, I will go with it and enjoy it. And in fact, I had a dream a couple of months ago where that happened.
Excellent. And what was it? I mean, did you, and you passed over the feeling?
In my dream, I left my body and was just very happy and completely in control of it. I was able to guide myself and feel completely in control and completely happy and relaxed with it.
Excellent. That sounds fascinating. I love this kind of stuff. I mean, personally, interestingly, last night I ordered, I can't remember the author's name, but it's called Alchemy, The Great Work. So I ordered that last night. And I'm like, I think I'm verging on an obsession when it comes to alchemical formulation in the context of psychology. And the reason I'm saying that is because one of the things when I was looking on last night that stumbled across this book was them talking about, essentially, there's a thing in alchemy where it's you watch as you sleep. So the reason what they're trying to describe is that in the process of falling asleep, and I tried to do it last night, but I was relatively stoned and kind of forgot. But it was like, so what you're supposed to do is, if you're conscious and if you focus at the same point as you're falling asleep, you reach this like mediative place where you're essentially hallucinating in a sense, and you're experiencing an out-of-body experience. And it's interesting because when I found it last night, maybe 3 or 4 nights ago, I had this weird, it was like a bizarre, like I'm lying on my bed and I'm just like, normally I'm reading some Aldous Huxley at the moment, perennial philosophy, really enjoying it. So I don't know if it's relation to that, I have no idea, but I'm lying there and it was like a bizarre, it was like imagery, it was like a cap with, it was just bizarre imagery that, and I'm very conscious of the fact that before I fell asleep I was like, this is weird, and then I'm sleeping, and I just find it fascinating, the human mind, because we like the amount, as we mentioned at the beginning, the suppression based in media and things like that, the opposite side of that spectrum is like, you can really, the human mind is
the media really. That shuts down that part of your brain. It's fascinating what you're saying, because many years ago when I was having very bad waking night terrors, I had to teach myself lucid dreaming.
Right.
And I learned how to give myself a signal in a nightmare and wake myself up. And I just used to get used to being in weird states where I was like not fully in one reality or the other, or going from one to the other, or yeah, it was pretty full on, but it actually got rid of my waking night terrors in the end, along with getting healed from years of trauma. Just, I had a diagnosis 20 something years ago, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and that did make my life hell for a while, but thanks to cannabis oil, it's got loads better. But I've been fascinated since I was about 12 by different states of being, and I've read so many books, Huxley, loads of other books. In fact, it was when I was 7 that I read I read Tintin in Tibet. This will sound crazy, but one of the characters in Tintin in Tibet was this yogi who levitated, and I'd never seen levitating before age 7, and it blew my mind. And I decided that I would try and find out more about this, and find out about these people who just wear like robes and meditate a lot and try and leave their bodies. And that's what I'm trying to do now. It's not quite with robes, but it's a bit cold here.
No, I completely share their sentiment on that 100%. Because I'm the same. I'm in that position where it's like, I can't get enough of this, the human capacity. And let's say alchemy is, the movie that's coming this year has an alchemical center around it. So that's all I'm going to say.
I can't wait.
Thank you. Like, honestly, it's really, let's say I was working on something this morning. I need to get moving, really, because it's such an intensive, there's such an intensive amount. So that's why I'm going to do a lot more interviews this year. And I'm just going to kind of push back on the animations and just focus exclusively until the movie's done, and then start season 3 in October. But yeah, it's I'm looking forward to it, Sarah. But just, I mean, for people that are unfamiliar with your story, Sarah, where would you say it all starts, and like, where does cannabis come into it?
Yes, well, cannabis, I got ill when I was 17 with severe Crohn's disease, and that was when, up until then, I didn't have cannabis in my life at all, didn't really know about it. Alcohol and tobacco were my main things, and I started off trying to treat my Crohn's disease with alcohol, which didn't really work. And then at a party, someone handed me a joint with tobacco and weed, and I was like, oh my God, this works on my pain. This is actually working, whereas alcohol makes my pain worse. And basically that was it. And from then onwards, my life revolved around cannabis. It got a bit more, age 21, my illness progressed and got worse and worse. And age 21, I was given not long to live. I was given less than 6 months to live due to severe and extensive ulceration in most of my digestive system. I should say right now, there may be some graphic descriptions of terminal illness. I don't want to put people off, but it can be, if you're not used to it. I just want to say, watch out, because I might accidentally say something that's pretty normal to me, but not to other people.
No, that's 100%. We need to detail this as much as possible, because it highlights how effective cannabis has been over your journey.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, when I was given not long to live and my symptoms were, I was terminally ill, my symptoms were horrendous. I was smoking an eighth a day at that point, and had been for a few years, because mainly in hot tongs and pipes.
Mm.
Because by then I'd realised that smoking it on its own without tobacco was far better for my pain as well as my health. I ate it when I could, but to be honest, I was so poor that I just never had enough to eat and smoke, and I didn't know enough then to know that the hash I craved, that I went to great lengths to get, was actually 1-to-1 CBD to THC.
Right.
And now I understand that, and it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, so hash got me through. The reason I survived that diagnosis without any medical intervention was because I did an 8-week fast under the instructions of my medical herbalist. And cannabis got me through that, because I was, without a doubt, I wouldn't have survived. The pain was indescribable. The symptoms were horrific. As bad as terminal cancer. When Crohn's is severe and terminal, it's as bad. It was pretty.
I mean, if you were to detail some of that, Sarah, because most people will think Crohn's is a bit of a sore stomach. Like, could you detail?
God.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Just if
Well,
you don't mind, if you don't
no,
mind.
I don't mind. I don't mind. I just feel sorry for everyone listening.
I'm sure they'll
I
get
mean,
all right.
basically, the one of the most persistent symptoms. Well, it starts off not too bad. Like when I was 17, the worst symptoms were nausea, with diarrhea with blood in it, and stomach pain, and that was it. And that gradually got worse and worse and worse until when I was diagnosed with less than 6. I was diagnosed with Crohn's the same day I was told I had not long to live. By that point, I was passing out with pain and incontinent and losing blood probably 20 times a day, and vomiting every day as well. And then a month after that diagnosis, things got so bad that my hair started falling out, my fingernails started falling out, and I started losing bits of bowel down the toilet, as well as a lot of blood and pus. It was pretty grim.
Right.
And I would have, there's no doubt I would have died. My insides were literally, my body was literally falling apart. I was literally watching it happen.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty horrendous. And yeah, cannabis got me through that, along with my medical herbalist instructions in fasting and herbal tea and slippery elm. Because for the first 4 weeks, I just had water, herbal tea, and slippery elm. And for the last 4 weeks of the fast, my herbalist told me to introduce raw juiced beetroot and carrot as well, because I was deficient. They were high in antioxidants, and I was deficient in nutrients. So.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I was able to slowly, I had to relearn to eat, really. I had to slowly introduce foods one by one. And then 2 years later, I nearly died again of what's called a perianal fistula, which was actually a hole in my rectum that leaked diarrhea into my body for somewhere around 1.5 years, and destroyed a huge chunk of the inside of my left buttock up around the base of my spine. So then
Sorry, is that like genetic, or is that, what was that caused from? Is that from Crohn's as well?
It's a side effect of Crohn's,
Right.
where my digestive system had been severely ulcerated. Some of these ulcers had formed holes in my rectum.
Right.
Other parts of my bowel were so severely, my descending colon, for instance, was so severely ulcerated that when I eventually healed the ulcers and went back for scans, they said my bowel wall was 1/4 of the thickness it should have been.
Right.
So it probably went close to coming out of, my bowel leaking out of places. I was very lucky that it was only in my rectum. But that fistulas, they're called fistulas, and it's a hole in an organ or somewhere that then leaks diarrhea into either into another organ or another part of your body, and causes a huge amount of damage and pain. And I nearly died of septicemia. I did have to have a life-saving surgery in a hospital in London, but I turned down all the Crohn's drugs and only had their analgesia and cannabis, because I still smoked loads of cannabis in the hospital.
Right. How did that go down? Were they okay with that?
Absolutely fine. Yeah, I've smoked cannabis for 25 years. I smoked it everywhere I went, and to be honest, that was mostly in a pipe.
Right.
And because I was in so much pain, I would have like a one hitter and just hold it in. There was nothing coming out, so there was nothing to smell. And I was normally smoking hash anyway.
Yeah.
Because I preferred it. Now that I grow, I do both. But yeah, so cannabis got me through some really hard times, basically, and I've spent the last.
So when you had you would have been roughly 23. Is that when you had surgery?
Yeah, I had my 23rd, or no, I had my 24th birthday in hospital. Yeah, and I was very lucky that this fistula specialist fistula hospital in London, at the time, it was the only fistula hospital in the world, apart from one in Switzerland and one in America. Thank God, since then there's been more built. But
Mm-hmm.
I was very lucky, and I had a world-class surgeon, and all on the NHS. I was just really lucky. I had to fight for that treatment. I had to, yell at consultants, local consultants in hospitals. I had to turn the air blue and refuse to move until they sorted me out, which is ironic. I couldn't walk at the time anyway. But yeah, it was pretty full on. And I spent the 29, well, basically after that fistula surgery, that was when I ended up on palliative care for 14 years, because when I'd nearly died of ulceration, I'd healed it all with the fast and a really careful diet afterwards, and a lot of herbal tea and slippery elm, and smoking shitloads of cannabis. But I was left with severe scarring, because ulceration doesn't just go from severe ulcers to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It goes from severe ulcers to severe scarring, which is absolute agony.
Right.
And after the fistula, I was left with severe scarring in my buttock and around my groin and around the base of my spine, where I already had a collapsed disc, and then all this internal scarring as well. And that was when I ended up in a really bad way for 14 years. I was prescribed high doses of morphine, even though I never took any of their Crohn's drugs, and I carried on with my diet and herbal tea and the cannabis. I was passing out with pain.
Mm-hmm.
And fatigue on a regular basis. So I did resort to their drugs as far as pain relief. Also, things like benzodiazepines. I was prescribed a huge amount of Valium. Like at one point, it was 200 milligrams a day.
Right.
I was on 240 milligrams of morphine a day as well, because there was nothing the doctors could do for me, except cut out most of my digestive system, which I just didn't want.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty hard 14 years after that life-saving fistula surgery. And that was when I developed the waking night terrors, and had to learn to lucid dream.
Yeah.
And through this time, I always did deep breathing and meditation whenever I could. And I'm sure it's part of the reason.
Sorry, you kind of broke up there, Sarah. What did you say? It's part of the reason.
No, I just stopped. I just
All right,
saying,
no.
part of the reason I survived, I'm sure, is because I wasn't just taking loads of cannabis and herbal teas and slippery elm and a very careful diet. I was also meditating and deep breathing my way through the pain wherever possible.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, over the course of the 14 years, and are you developing more of an acute sense of what cannabis is working? And I mean, at that time, most likely cannabinoid profiles and ratios would have been relatively minimal through knowledge, I'm assuming.
All I could get was the hash I loved, which I went to great lengths. I can't live without hash. It's just part of my life and has been for 30 years, which is not easy in this country.
Yeah.
There were some times when I had to deal with shite quality. Thank God it's got better again. But yeah, the one-to-one CBD to THC. And then I started growing myself about 15 years ago when I got well enough. And then I started using weed as well, and picking what strains I liked, and, trying different strains out and that sort of thing. So yeah, I was mainly smoking for 14 years, really, without realizing that if I could have stopped my addiction to smoking and my fear of passing out with pain and fatigue, if I could have got over that and put just half of the hash I smoked every day into eating it, my symptoms would have improved more. But number one, I was addicted to smoking. I was smoking it as well as pipes and hot tongs. I was smoking it in spliffs. I mean, I never went to sleep without a spliff next to my bed. I did not wake up without a spliff. It just, I never went anywhere without a pipe and a spliff and a bloom. It just,
There'll be lots of people watching this cheering, like, yeah, I feel you.
yeah. And like I say, the hospital was absolutely fine about it. They never had any problems. Back in those days, you could smoke on the fire escape or under the fan in the bathroom.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, let's say, Sarah, that's even looking over your story and stuff like that. The term, obviously, cannabis warrior gets passed around relatively loose nowadays, but you definitely 100, you're topping the list when it comes to that kind of thing. Honestly, truly.
Yeah, it's pretty full on. And then after the 14 years in bed, my health slowly improved. It was just so slow. And for me, cannabis oil has really accelerated the healing, because all the herbs and the herbal medicine and functional nutrition that I've been taking on a daily basis for nearly 30 years now, that laid the groundwork and was healing. Like the comfrey tea, the cannabis, the herbal tea I've drunken every day for God knows how many years. I vary it, I change the herbs, but I did drink comfrey leaf every day for many years, and that's supposed to be highly toxic, but actually it healed scarring that's not meant to be healable.
Right.
So there's no doubt that the smoking was helping in some way, and I was healing, but like I say, it was unbelievably slow and painful.
Mm-hmm.
And after 14 years of that, I managed to slowly reduce and come off the benzos and the morphine. And then I met my partner about 12 years ago, who got me into swapping some of I was left on like these strong codeine tablets called dihydrocodeine. I was prescribed 12 a day.
Right.
And the longer I took them for, the more it aggravated my stomach. So I'd come off palliative care. I was more mobile. My life was better, but still I would collapse and pass out with pain and pass blood quite regularly. It was still pretty shit, really. It was just not as shit as it was.
Yeah.
It was this slow, steady recovery that just seemed to take forever, really. And yeah, when I met my partner, he got me to swap some of the dihydrocodeine for hash bangs, and that really helped. And I managed to get down to about from 12 dihydrocodeine a day to about 6, and then I sort of like couldn't go any lower because I would just pass out with pain, just be in agony. So because, as I say, even though the disease had been in remission for years, I had such severe scarring in my digestive system, scarring that, you know, the doctors would have cut out if I'd let them.
Yeah.
So that was a cause of a lot of the pain. And when I reached 6 a day, I think it was in 2013, Christmas 2013, somebody sent me cannabis oil through the post. And I took it and I thought, wow, this is incredible pain relief. And my partner basically persuaded me to start making it and taking it and give up the dihydrocodeine. And that's basically more or less what happened, although it wasn't that straightforward, because when we first started making oil in February 2014, it made me ill because I just copied the instructions off the internet, which meant boiling it basically. You know, you soak it in alcohol, and I'd been making my own alcohol and making my own tinctures for quite a while at that point, so I knew quite a bit about alcohol production, how to make quality alcohol, but I'd never gone the final step of evaporating the alcohol and you know, creating this thick concentrated oil. So we did it the Rick Simpson way, which was boil it basically, because you know, they use toxic solvents. I was using my own homemade distilled organic cider. But still, the resulting oil from that made me collapse in pain. I didn't pass out, but I collapsed. I remember on the kitchen floor, and I said to my partner, right, that's it. You know, my body's so weird that cannabis oil works for everyone. It don't work for me. So I give up. I've tried to give up. And he was like, no, wait. And he'd spoken to somebody at a festival who'd worked in a cannabinoid laboratory with scientists in the UK, and they'd told him that cannabinoids shrunk at high temperatures. And he said, I've got a feeling blood temperature will work. And by then I was so pissed off with the whole thing. I was like, you think it'll work? You do it. I'm just going to lie down and recover from the pain of taking that shitty stuff, basically. So while I was recovering, he was making it at 37 degrees. And when he finished, he was like, try this. And I was like really scared to try it, but I trusted him. And I took it, and it treated every one of my symptoms, and it was completely different, and I was completely hooked. And that's it. I've been making and taking it every day since. And now I'm off all pharmaceuticals apart from a B12 injection, which I have every 2 or 3 months. Because obviously with my disease, I've had a lot of nutritional deficiencies, and that's partly why I got into growing cannabis probiotically, because I'm a bit obsessed with getting my food as nutrient dense, my food and medicine as nutrient dense as possible, because you know, it's really boring and crap having deficiencies that make you feel ill. So yeah, that's how I started on the oil, basically.
I absolutely love that story, Sarah. Particularly that it was after meeting your partner had such a significant impact on your health. I love that. That's such a love story, really. Let's be honest. And cannabis is slap bang right in the middle of that.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. He's quite an amazing person. He's got an instinct for the plant, that's for sure. He's a lot more instinctive than I am with it. My skills lie in blending, evaporating at different temperatures and blending oils made at different temperatures and different ratios with different cannabinoids, because I'm always looking, this is going to sound a bit crazy actually, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's true. My first thing I'm always looking for with my illness is symptom relief. But I've found of all my symptoms, perhaps I should quickly list them. There's severe pain, nausea, diarrhea, fatigue. The nausea will progress to retching and vomiting if it's not treated really quickly with herbal meds. And the diarrhea will progress to incontinence, and that's where it becomes life-threatening if it's not stabilized pretty quickly. So basically, damn it, I've forgotten what I was saying. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It was essentially about the medicine and how the like you've been so focused on
what I'm trying to replicate. Yeah, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
My first need is always symptom relief.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out from making this 37° C oil, because when I first had it tested, it was 1-to-1 THCA to THC.
Right.
So anyone out there who wants to make 1-to-1 anything, just evaporate it at 37C, and that will give you within probably less than 0.25% up to 1-to-1. And this ratio not only treated all my symptoms, but it gave me some wonderful mental effects as well. And I found that my mental state was so linked to my stomach and my digestive system. And I learned that, in fact, I've learned it through that pranic tube meditation as well, that there's certain exercises you can do with your stomach muscles that will help to increase a sense of bliss and wellness and can open up your crown chakra. It's quite astonishing. The brain gut axis is so powerful. It kind of rules all our lives and we don't even think about it most of the time. But a bit like the ECS.
Yeah, exactly. It's really interesting you say about that, about the brain gut dynamic, is because I think could be wrong, anybody that's watching, put in the comments if I am, but that there is as much neurons in your gut lining as there are in your brain, something like that.
It's true. Yeah, it's absolutely true. There's some fascinating links. I was reading a research paper last year as well that had just an amazing diagram of the gut lining and how it showed the interaction between microbes and cannabinoid receptors in the gut and the brain. Direct link is just incredible, really. So yeah, when I'm looking to treat all my symptoms, I'm also looking to feel fantastic.
Yeah,
two go together for me.
Quite right.
So one of the things I think about every day, and it's one of the things that guides me when I'm making oil, it will sound crazy probably, but one of my two of the most powerful out-of-body experiences I've had were accompanied by an incredible feeling of love, peace and joy. So part of me is trying to recreate that when I'm making my oils, because that's when it treats my gut the best as well. As well as all my other symptoms, because I used to have severe osteoporosis. I got collapsed disc in my spine, prematurely aged and narrowed left hip. So, there's a lot going on. I've also got autism, and as I mentioned earlier, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So there's a lot to treat there.
Yeah, and cannabis is a kind of one fit all. I mean, is it that do you think is there anything that's deficient when you're preparing? Does it sometimes you have to use oil mixed with others if it doesn't hit, like the autism element or your collapsed disc? Is there anything that you've essentially found over the years that hits the perfect ratio?
Well, 1-to-1 THCA to THC is perfect for severe pain of any kind. It's also perfect for aggressive cancers, seizures, loads of things. But I found that when I was taking huge doses of 1-to-1 THCA to THC oil and I mean huge doses, for a while, like years, I found that I started experiencing anxiety. And that was when I started experimenting with CBD. So I would evaporate CBD oil at the same temperature of THC oil, and I would end up with 1-to-1 CBDA to CBD. Whenever I first try out a new cannabinoid like CBD or CBG, I first evaporate it at 20 degrees, which gives me almost entirely CBDA or CBGA or THCA. And that gives me a chance to try out that cannabinoid on its own, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
on my symptoms. And that was how I found out that CBDA is the best antidepressant.
Right.
However, it doesn't treat my anxiety. So mixing it in certain ratios does. Over the years, I've perfected my ratios. Like now I have different ratios for evening than I do for morning. I have ratios to chill. I have ratios to work. I have ratios to party.
Excellent, excellent. I mean, it might sound ignorant, but what is it you use to evaporate? Is that a slow cooker? I mean, how are you able to fine tune it so accurately?
Well, to be honest, it's pretty basic. I really want a machine. If anyone's listening and you can get a machine in America called a Source Turbo, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for the packaging. Please help me get it. They don't ship out of America. And I
You just
can't
hear your doorbell, ding dong.
and I can't find an equivalent in Europe. So basically what I do is I have a enamel baking tray, because you want a large surface area to, because I'm evaporating like 500 grams and maybe up to I don't know, quite a few liters in one go. I could use up to 8 liters of alcohol in one go if it's a big batch. And so a big surface area is necessary. I sometimes have to do it in 2 batches because it's too big for the baking tray. And the baking tray sits on a reptile mat, which has a thermostat attached to it. So you can turn the reptile mat anywhere from 21 to 60 degrees C. So that's it, basically. It's really, really low tech. My partner has drawn a diagram of a sealed unit, and he's had the idea that if we bought certain equipment, like vacuum pumps and things, we could reclaim the alcohol vapor at low temperatures, which would save a lot of time and effort, and mainly money for me, because I am pretty broke.
Snap. I feel the same.
Yeah, it's so normal. I don't even know why I'm bothered saying
That's
it.
what it's like when I'm the same. I've watched the fucking electricity cut out.
Skin on the front line of prohibition. I call it the cold face of prohibition.
Rightly so.
Yeah.
Fucking electricity is going to cut out in a minute.
Yeah, so basically one day, if I can't get this machine, one day I will be forced to make one with help that reclaims the alcohol vapor. So that's the only fly in the ointment, so to speak, at the moment, is that I'm losing alcohol vapor and also terpenes as well. I'm pretty sure if the unit was sealed, I would lose less terpenes, and it would speed up evaporation. The whole process would speed up because it's very slow if you're doing a big batch. So that's basically how I do it.
One of the things that was most popping to mind when you're describing that there is the current medical narrative that you should only source medicinal cannabis through specific clinics. And yet in my mind, that when you're talking about this, I'm like, this is just so the perfect poster circumstance to show that that's not the case. That's a profiteering dynamic.
Totally. I did a presentation for the Analytical Cannabis Expo with Dr. Gary Yates back in November last year. And part of the reason I did that was that if I ever end up in court, this is my bloody evidence. I've got lab tests. I've got everything to show that the oil I make cannot be got on prescription. How I wish it could. Because then all the time and effort I put into this, I might be able to put in something else, like drawing, learning to play the bass, all the stuff I would love to do that I never have time to do. Gardening, so much. And just like socializing, I very, very rarely socialize because I'm just, apart from all my symptoms and symptom control, my diet is so specialized that I don't go anywhere without food and a flask of herbal tea.
Yeah, quite right.
A whole load of oil of different ratios and things. So yeah, I wish it was available on prescription, and yeah, it does really annoy me. I mean, there are companies like Goldman Sachs who are quite open in their board meeting. You can read in their board meetings, this is going back to 2016, I think it was, there was an article published in Forbes, I believe it was, saying that cures are not profitable. And it mentioned this particular board meeting where they discussed sustainable business models. So I'm coming from sustainable health model, because money is meaningless when you're passing out with pain and your illness is trying to kill you. Nothing matters except getting relief from that illness. It's just unfortunate that that costs money to get the bloody relief. But I'm not anti-pharmaceutical, because when you were talking to Simpo, it was quite interesting hearing you talk about pharmaceuticals, because one of the things I really care about is getting cannabinoids into pharmaceuticals, but cannabinoid plant acids as well. I mean, useful ratios that actually work in things like injectable cannabinoids for emergency situations, because even though I'm not anti-pharmaceutical, long term they can be really damaging. Short term they can be life-saving. My life has been saved twice by a combination of cannabis and pharmaceuticals. The first time was life-saving surgery when I was 23, because I had to be knocked unconscious with some very strong drugs, and I was also taking shitloads of herbs and cannabis. I was still smoking an eighth a day, well, maybe a bit less in hospital. But to be honest, in January 2020, I basically nearly worked myself to death intentionally because I wasn't getting enough help. And I thought, well, I'll either die and go home for a good rest, or I'll live and get more help, which happened. I forgot how awful and traumatizing it is nearly dying of Crohn's disease. I just won't do that again in a hurry. My life was saved partly by cannabinoids and partly by intravenous antiemetics and paracetamol. And all I could think while I was passing in and out of consciousness, I had some interesting out-of-body experiences then. I found myself hovering just below the ceiling like every 20 to 30 minutes for 48 hours while I was passing in and out with extreme pain. My whole digestive system was severely inflamed. And all I could think was, looking at the drip going in my arm, is why is there not CBDA in this antiemetic? I'd be getting better so much quicker. Because it's really hard to absorb cannabinoids when you're dying. And this is rarely discussed in the cannabis community, because people who die on a regular basis are either dead or they don't want to talk about it because it's so shit.
So that's really actually quite a fascinating thing to discuss, because I mean, that's what is that, because is your endocannabinoid system the first thing to shut down? It inhibits the ability to absorb the goodness from the cannabinoids, or
it's purely because my nausea has been going on for so long, and once I get into vomiting, you can't. It's a kind of vicious circle. It's like fecal incontinence. When the two happen together, it's deadly. And one of the reasons I couldn't ingest oils because I was bringing up everything, water, you name it, it was coming up. I was vomiting blood actually, because I've been vomiting so excessively. And at that point, anything that touches your tongue is going to make you puke. You fucked, basically. And the only way it could get into my body was rectally, and that was down to my wonderful partner, who as I was like passing in and out of consciousness every 20 to 30 minutes and hovering below the ceiling and then going back into my body and waking up thinking, oh shit, I'm still here again in agony. I said to him, look, the doctors were struggling to stabilize me and they couldn't really figure out why. They did figure it out eventually, but part of the puzzle to me stabilizing and recovering was cannabinoids. So I said to my partner, I'm not going to make this unless you can go home and get this particular oil, which I know is 16.7% CBDA, 20% CBD and 9% THC. I said, go home, make that oil into as many suppositories as you can, bring it back and put it in for me, please, darling, because I couldn't even move. And the man, he deserves a medal, really. He did do that. And that was when I started stabilizing. It was also partly due to the infusions I was getting, because all my levels were on the floor. Every single nutrient in my body was on the floor because I'd had such severe vomiting and incontinence for quite a while, because I nearly didn't call the ambulance. It was very close, because whether I actually let myself die or go into hospital, I was like, oh, because I've been through so much shit. One of the reasons I got complex post-traumatic stress disorder is what I've been through in hospital, what doctors have done to me to try and treat my illness. Has traumatized me so badly that it's like, oh, is it better to die or get treated in a hospital? And people say the NHS is in crisis, people being treated on trolleys. Yeah, it was like that 30 bloody years ago as well, actually. I was treated on a trolley when I was dying of septicemia from the fistula when I was 23. People queued up on a trolley. That was anyway, don't let me go into it. But yeah, so basically an NHS in crisis nearly my whole life, combined with trauma, meant that it was almost easier to die. It sounds sad to say that, than to go to the NHS, but that's also, I knew, because I'm an illegal cannabis, there's a whole nother layer on top of my traumas. It's like, shit.
Yeah.
I'm going to be an illegal cannabis patient. And because I wasn't well enough at the time to travel to the specialist hospital in London, where they are far more lenient about cannabis, they wouldn't really care, because they only deal with people who have life-threatening, the most severe types of bowel disease, and fistula go there from all over Europe. And I knew that at the local hospital where I'd had bad treatment 30 years ago, where I'd argued, that's one of the places where I'd had to shout and turn the air blue, sticking up for my rights, to get proper rights for my treatment. So I knew it was going to be hard, and it was. I should say that the people in the critical assessment unit in A&E, and when I got better and I was moved to the acute medical unit, those staff were 100% on board with my oil and suppositories, and they supported me all the way. I even had the pharmacist was incredible. I was going to get back in touch with him as well, because he came to me and said, I need to write down your medication, cannabis oil medication, on the chart. How many milligrams of each how many milligrams of active ingredient is in each of your capsules? And I'm like, there's 4 active ingredients. I can a load more I can't in each capsule.
Yeah.
So basically, the pharmacist was really good and got me a cool box next to my hospital bed with ice packs in, so I could keep my raw juiced cannabis in it, and my suppositories.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And do you know what's interesting about that as well, Sarah, is that one of the things that I always think sometimes used as a distraction is that they say that one of the inhibiting factors about getting cannabis medically is an ignorance towards GPs administering it, and it sounds very clear that's very real. You know, that you do have kind of like a polarized demographic of medical practitioners, who are some individuals who clearly are self-educated, have informed themselves, or they've experienced it through individuals such as yourself, and then there's others who are just like, they're almost conditioned not to even look at it.
Well, yeah, it got worse for me when I got, ironically, as my health improved during this hospital stay in 2020, January 2020, after nearly dying. I was moved from the critical assessment unit to the acute medical unit. The staff in those 2, as I said, were second to none. I got nothing but praise. They made the hard thing much easier for me. They really did. They did everything they could to make it easier for me to take any medicine I wanted that would help me get better. You know, that's their job. But when I was stable, I was moved to a general ward, and there was no beds on the gastroenterology ward. So I was moved to a general respiratory ward, and a consultant in charge of the ward was really anti-cannabis. And that's when my life became hell, because it was really bad. I ended up having to shout at so many people. My complex post-traumatic stress disorder went through the roof, and I found myself lashing out physically. And I had to ring social services adult safeguarding unit and say, if you don't change, if you don't get this consultant away from me, I'm going to hit him. I'm warning you now, I cannot be responsible for my actions, because this man is dangerous to my health. His attitude is so backwards and wrong. I mean, we had a screaming row where he was like shouting at me, get your cannabis off my ward. And I'm like, I'm an illegal cannabis patient because I'm poor. So you're actually discriminating against me because I'm poor. So basically, you know, get out of my room. Basically, get away.
Just for sorry, sir, just for Americans that are any people around the world that are unfamiliar, this is 2020. Therefore, cannabis is actually 2018 legal in the UK for administering through medical, specific, very fine-tuned, like 3 or 4 conditions at that time.
Thank you for pointing that out, Connor. Yeah, because I forget that if you're not in the UK, and even if you are in the UK and you're not part of the cannabis scene, you won't be aware of this. So many people say to me, oh, but it's legal now, isn't it? No, it bloody ain't. And even if I could get it legally prescribed by the NHS, it wouldn't contain cannabinoid plant acids. I didn't bother explaining that to that consultant, because how can you explain something like that to someone whose level of ignorance is up there, you know? And unfortunately, on that ward, there were a few nurses who followed his lead, who also made my life hell. And I just had to shout and stay firm and call social services were bloody brilliant.
Right.
They fully supported me, and it's thanks to them that I'm recovering, really.
So what was your response in that? Did they show up and then you got your medicine, or did you have to be moved to a different ward? Or
no, I just didn't see that doctor again. They kept him away from me. They got the gastroenterology team to deal with me, and they were like totally open to it, because they could see that what I'm doing is to basically to have that severe I mean, I'm frequently not believed by doctors, because to have such severe and widespread ulceration and have none of it removed is literally unheard of. In 30 years, I haven't met anyone else who's done that. And I'm not trying to big myself up, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying I'm frequently not believed by doctors because of it. And yeah, luckily I had a full psychiatric evaluation during that time in the hospital, and the psychiatrist was totally on my side as well and said, keep doing what you're doing. I don't think you've got psychosis. I think you're traumatized and you're doing a good thing for your health. Don't give up, keep on. I was like, thank you. She asked if she was educated about CBD and THC at least, and I showed her my this bottle's actually, I've got to top it up, it's actually running out, but this was, I was taking this a lot in the hospital because it's the oil I mentioned earlier, which is 16.7 CBDA, 20% CBD and 9% THC. It's just really useful ratios for me for nausea and anxiety, and also things like cardiac arrhythmia, bradycardia, tachycardia, but mainly nausea. And as I was talking to her, I showed her this. I said, look, see this bottle, 16.7 CBDA, 20% CBD, 9% THC. I get this tested in a lab. I'm doing everything to the highest possible standard. It's all organic. It's all probiotic. I would love to do this professionally and help other people as well. But I'm not allowed to. And yeah, she was fully supportive. It was really, really nice to see an NHS psychiatrist, consultant psychiatrist, who was educated on at least CBD and THC.
Yeah, to be honest, Sarah, you should be about teaching and all. You should be putting this in a book. That's what should be going on here. You should be documenting this not only your knowledge of cannabinoid profiles, but the experience you've had, you know, over the course of the years, having to fight to. I mean, when you mentioned there, like you had a psychiatric evaluation, the first thing I put to mind was like, it's ironic that you would have that, whereas the truth is, the psychosis was displayed through your consultant. That's a psychotic episode that individual was displaying there.
I know. He was shouting at me, but I realized through meditation, I realized that he was actually scared, and most anger comes from fear. People are being assholes, even Donnie in your comics.
I love him. Representation of the head.
Oh God, I wish I could have a chat with him one day.
It's so bad. No, I tell you, feel like it under the It's always so funny that everybody loves Donnie. Nobody likes Cannaman, and sometimes I don't know what it is. It's like fucking.
I do like Cannaman, but Donnie reminds me of myself when I'm pissed off.
Yeah, quite right. The thing is, it is really good, and I think that's what, because my son was talking about this. You know, like I was saying before, you know, he's only 8, and like, I'm wearing my Cannaman jersey just by pure chance, quite honestly. And I picked him up from school, and he came in, and I took my coat off, and he looked at it, and he was like, "Daddy, I need to get that jersey." And I was like, "I'll get you one, little man."
Oh, that's so cute.
Honestly, he's an absolute superstar. But he said to me, he was like, would you do a season of Donnie? And I was thinking about this. This was a couple of weeks ago when he mentioned about just doing a season of Donnie, and I was thinking like a spin-off series. And I was thinking, do you know, it'd be quite the thing. It would be cool. It'd be a good idea. But the thing that popped to my mind, quite honestly, was that Donnie, in the context of the context of Cannaman and Donnie, obviously, Cannaman is the superego and the ego. So he's the mediating factor, he's the wise one, he's the one that's for guidance. Donnie is the representation of the id, so it's all explicit, it's all pleasure-based, it's all desire-based. And what's interesting is I thought this to myself, if I was to do a season of Donnie, inevitably, because there wouldn't be that thing to bounce off for the balance, exactly that, Sarah. So, and I was like, inevitably, his character would manifest and change into something that wouldn't be as desirable as what people like.
You're absolutely right. That's really interesting. Yeah. You have to have, it's like the yin and the yang. You have to have the two together or it won't work. The dynamic is as important as the individual characters.
Exactly. And that's what's perfect, because I mean, even when you say the yin and yang, so I'm doing I'm in two minds. This is wee insight for October, was that this October I'm going to be beginning season 3, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that 7 episodes in each season, and each episode is going to be there's 7 episodes, so each episode is going to be from a principle that's in the Hermetic philosophy of Hermes Trismegistus. So I'm going to make it so the 7 principles, obviously, says about the universe. And one of the things I was going to include in it, but I'm going to just take it from the side and put it into a couch skit, is a couch skit called Psyche. And in the Psyche couch skit, I'm going to make it so that essentially they're in a wee room, and it's exactly what you're describing. They are going to be discussing each other, and they're going to be discussing the dynamic of how do we get in this room. And in the background on the door is a yin and yang symbol, and the whole basis of the dialogue. And in the corner, there's going to be a shadow, and then in And CANNAMAN's going to continuously keep saying to Donnie, like, you have to look at the shadow. You have to look at him. Donnie's like, I don't want to fucking look at him. No, I'm not needing to look at him. And the whole basis of the thing is the psychological necessity of confronting your shadow element of your psyche in order to free yourself out of the door.
There you go. There's the proof that Donnie being an asshole comes from fear. Just like the doctor in the local hospital.
Exactly. And it's just so commonplace, and it's so frustrating that, let's say, I mean, it's perfect that you were able to stand up for yourself in that relatively, obviously, debilitating situation that you have to deal with a social pressure based on healing yourself because of this man's ignorance and his ego. It was his ego that was controlling that situation by the sounds of it. Like, I'm the doctor, I know better, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but he was scared of unlicensed cannabis because number one, he'd been taught by the government to be frightened of it, and then it causes psychosis. And number two, it was unlicensed, and that brings a whole nother, he knows it's legal, but not in the form I've got it in. Therefore, it's wrong on 2 counts because number one, it's cannabis, and number two, it's unlicensed.
Yeah.
But I would say, yeah, of course, I'm afraid a lot of my interactions with doctors have involved ego. There's no doubt about it. I think the whole dynamic with doctors is not right. I mean, they have, it's a complicated one. There's so many interacting factors, but yeah, it's just unfortunate the way it goes. I mean, I've had so many experiences. I mean, God, I could tell you some pretty horrific ones that have caused me physical injury, actually, that have come down to not just doctors, but nurses reacting really badly to someone politely questioning them. And believe me, I can be really polite and nice. I'm not an asshole. Sometimes I have to be, but I don't try and do that as a default position. I'm trying to come from a good place, but it's caused a lot of problems, where doctors think because they've done all this training, whereas in fact I'm studying to be a medical herbalist, and to be a medical herbalist you have to study for exactly the same length of time as a GP, and you have to do 500 hours supervised clinical practice, and in fact you have to study not only human anatomy and physiology but plant anatomy and physiology as well. And I would argue a medical herbalist is more educated, a lot more educated than a GP. And in fact, we've reached this. There are some GPs who are really good, and there are some doctors who are really good. And my life has been saved twice by the NHS and cannabis. But unfortunately, the majority, even if they're doing it for the right reasons, it's somehow got changed. And I think that's got a lot to do with overwork. Doctors are, I mean, I could go back, to 1993 or 4 when I had my life-saving fistula surgery. I went through another traumatic experience there at the hands of the surgeon, and that was because he started operating at 8 in the morning, and he finished operating at 7 or 8 in the evening. No one should have to spend 10 or 11 hours a day operating. So, hang on a sec. I'm just gonna mute it a sec. Hang on, bear with me.
That's okay.
Right, yeah. So basically with doctors, there's so many things that turn them into assholes, like overwork. Nobody should be forced to work in such stressful situations. Then we've got this whole thing now with pay. Like when I was critically ill in hospital and my partner helped save my life, one of the things I was shocked about was the nurses' wages. Like one of the nurses in the critical assessment unit, I said I was so grateful to her. She was like an angel, because at the time I couldn't move really, and she like had to do everything for me really. And she basically, I said to her, you know, when do you finish? When does the shift end? And she told me, and then she said, when I get home, I realise that I haven't had a cup of tea or been to the loo for nearly 12 hours. The whole time I've been at work. Because there's not time to have a break. So she just basically doesn't have a break. And when I asked what she was paid, it was really crap. And then there were some nurses being paid £45 an hour, agency nurses. There were some nurses, training nurses, student nurses being paid £6.20 an hour. There were some nurses on 8, 9, 10, 11, £12 an hour. And I just thought, no wonder this is in a total mess, when people doing life-saving work who are like angels, they really are. When you're in agony and you're dying and they're saving you, they really are like angels. And they do all that in shitty conditions with shit pay.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking to realise. And then really you realise what we're getting now is the inevitable result of that, really. And that if doctors are assholes sometimes, and sometimes nurses are assholes, it's because they're treated like shit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. That's, I mean, to be honest, it's exactly that. I was actually popping to mind where it's like years ago I was doing a confectionery job, and I was the same. I was in contact with an individual who was also like essentially training to be a doctor, and I was getting paid more. I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm making fucking donuts and that, and these are training to save human lives. It's like, this is. I don't know where to start with that. That's a really bizarre dynamic. You know, it shouldn't be that way. There's an injustice that's, you know, that's like what's his name, Darren McGarvey, the he's like a social political analyst, critic kind of thing. I think he pops to mind because most likely he'll have a lot to say about that. I'm mentioning him because I actually contacted him, and hopefully he's watching this because he's nowhere replied yet. So hopefully he'll come back on.
That rings a bell. It's possible I might follow him on Twitter or something.
Yeah, he was on the BBC talking about he was talking to that was maybe August, September last year, and he was talking to the UK's most strictest headmaster or something like that. And it was something like that, I don't know, and he was just pretty much telling her, like, you know, it's good that you're focused on the kids and stuff like that, but there's systemic issues that are needing resolved before these grades are going to go up. And he was essentially saying it starts in the home, you know, and it moves forward. But yes, I mean, since 2020, is your health been essentially steadily improving as a consequence of just developing more knowledge of cannabinoid profiles and things, or?
Yeah, I mean, since 2020, I've got into CBG. That's made a huge difference because it's fantastic for my brain and my gut. It seems to have some incredible effects. CBGA, of course. Yeah, no, I've definitely sort of like perfected things a bit, and well, they're not perfect, but you know, they're as close as I can get at the moment.
Yeah, right.
Different ratios and things. So
hot and cold.
Hot and cold. My partner's just
Sorry,
walked
I
into
just
the
walked
room.
in.
That's right.
This is Jade,
Jade.
who did do the
How you doing, mate?
Yeah.
This is Connor. I told
Right,
Connor about how you made the oil at 37 degrees C.
Oh yeah.
You started this whole thing off, really.
Yeah, quite right. Get this man a medal.
I imagine a CANNAMAN with he goes into another dimension. And it was in my head earlier. And he finds he finds oh, I lost it now. Sorry, that's how my brain goes. It'll come back in a minute.
No, sorry, I'm the same. I'll be like 3 days later, and I'm like, oh, that's what it was. I remember.
I'll grab it. It was there, and it was gone, and then it.
Yeah. As I was actually saying to Sarah earlier that I'm going to do I'm going to do a couch skit, and it's kind of like that. So it's kind of like they're in like a wee box. The episode's going to start, and they're in like a small box, and it's just got a door in front of it, and it's going to be nothing but it's not going to even be space with stars. It's going to be jet black, and I'm going to make it so on the door it's the yin and yang, and inside the wee box is going to have Cannaman and Donnie essentially leaning against the wall, just in this wee room, and they're going to be starting it off by questioning like why are we here? What are we doing? Like, you should have. How do we get here? And at the bottom, I'm going to have it so that there's a wee glass window, so they're going to look down through the window, and it's going to be essentially the collective unconscious, the subconscious at the bottom, and they're going to be going back and forward. And that's what I was saying to Sarah, that in the corner there's going to be this shadow figure, and the whole thing's supposed to be Cannaman telling Donnie, you're going to have to look at this guy, and Donnie's like, fuck that, let's just focus on how to get out of here. And the whole basis of the thing, no spoiler alert, is that by looking at the shadow, the door opens, and that's what the basis of the thing's going to be. So I'm going to have to put a wee event in between that because folk will be falling asleep. Like, this is uneventful.
Yeah,
It's getting yeah. You got some bang on stuff though. It's really good.
I really appreciate that, mate. I really appreciate that. The movie's going to be coming this year. I was doing that this morning, working on the movie, so hopefully that should be ready for. At the very latest, I'm hoping May, because I need to kind of do the last couple of months of fine-tuning it so that I can get it screened at, I'm hoping, Product Earth, and there's 2 or 3 other places, hopefully down in Devon as well, hopefully, with Charlie, and I'm hoping that my main thing, quite honestly, is to get some funding behind it through Creative Scotland. That's this kind of like independent organisation that helps like producers and directors, things like that, who have no money, which I'm fucking right in the category of that, where it's like, hopefully that I'll be able to get funding so that I can premiere this at the Fringe Festival. That's my whole main aim.
Oh God, would that be amazing?
I'm super hoping, because so there's 2 guys also that I'm getting to write, like Jay Soup on the Kryptonites. He's going to be writing the Cannaman original rap song. He rapped at the end, one of his songs called Arguing with the Devil at the end of Cannaman Saves God. That's his song. So I'm going to get him to write that, and they're hopefully going to be performing and shit. But let's say this is just make the movie, and then I'll take that when it's ready.
It's a bit like that, isn't it?
Sorry?
Sort of on the balance front.
100%.
Yeah, it's a bit sort of, there's sort of, you go to the market, you can buy what you want and everybody accepts it. But if it's sort of still illegal, isn't it? It's a bit.
Yeah.
Oh God! Well, I've been to France and it was okay with the. I did actually buy some nice hash actually in France. It was always nice hash to buy in France.
But it's sort of one way and the other, isn't it? Because it's illegal.
Well, it's very similar to here. In like people like you and me get screwed, and the corporations don't.
Yeah, yeah. I actually made hash. I've got a wee bit over there. I was showing a mate at the weekend there. I made it was just obviously silkscreen.
Let's have a look at your hash stash.
Want me to show you? I'll show you this. I've got about a gram left. I'll show you.
Yeah, I'm well up for seeing that.
Right. No subscribers be slating me for this because bear in mind I don't make it often, so it's not exactly fucking fine-tuned stuff. But yeah, I've silk screened it.
But we know you're not Frenchy cannoli, R.I.P.
Oh, definitely not.
Oh, it looks pretty good.
So
it's a bit grainy.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like hash.
Does it fluff when you have to walk?
Essentially, if I was to wait a minute. Don't know if you'll be able to break over the fucking laptop here.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, it looks lush inside. It's got a really nice texture. Looks fluffy. Oh God, I just want to like it.
I mean, it's good. Let's say
it's like you're passing it to me, and I can't get it. Sorry, I'm shouting.
Some viewers biting the screen.
Is that done with ice or is that ice?
Well, no. Essentially, it's funny that because the bubble hash, I was making that maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I've actually got the bubble bags here.
Yeah.
So I've got that.
Ah, right.
Bubble bag. This is I found it in the attic. I was like, fuck.
Right. Yeah.
It's the only bubble bag I had. So my intention was to make the bubble hash, but I could only find one bag. So I was like, I'm not really wanting one, and it was kind of a bit moldy. So what I did do was a fucking you can't laugh at this, right? So I got fucking. I couldn't find my silk screen. I bet I'll have a mate watching right now, but I've got it, dick. So this is it here. I got a fucking one of them and a cheesecloth. And literally just
There's no shame in that. We've done it.
Banging. That's a really nice tool.
We've done it.
Appreciate that.
Banging.
It worked really well, and let's say I was surprised because I mean the only thing is I'm kind of I have like hay fever, so when I was fucking sieving it, I just sneezing and sneeze. So the next night was just me fucking sneezing all the time, but it worked out well. And let's say I fucking when you're talking about earlier about hash, I love hash. Like that's my favorite, and my intention was to make this and then have it in hot chocolate. So I was just having it in like Bang or something like that. But I've ended up just smoking a lot of it, so I'll probably do that tonight later on. But it's been good, but I really appreciate that. Like, because like I say, it's not exactly a fucking. It was maybe curing at the very most for about a month, maybe 2 months or something. But yeah, it's good. I liked it. It was nice.
Nice.
Brilliant.
It worked out well. But yeah, let's say it's good fun. And when I was making hash before, it was always the bubble hash. My brother's dad, I made it with him, and I was like 16. The very first time we made it, we're just sitting there, and he's like, "Right, we'll make hash." And I was all excited. I was like, "Quality!" So he got the bag of green out, and he just threw it in the water. And I remember being like, "What the fuck?" Like he just threw this. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, exactly. But then obviously we got the hash from it. So since then, I just think it's a bit too much arm work to make the bubble hash.
Yeah. One of my friends made all these CBD breeds when I was back. This was quite a long time back, and I grew them outdoors, and I took them to not like the first green gatherings because they were back on the Flint fields, but a bit later. And I took it to this one green gathering, and what I'd done was I got butter, and I'd heated it up really slowly and not took it above simmering.
Right.
Melted it all this cannabis.
Oh, it must have had a lot of CBD.
And then extracted it, and then put it into these what we used to do was get like loads of sugar and bubble it so it got really hot, and then crush loads of biscuits and we'd mix the cannabis butter with that as it cooled, and the biscuits, and we'd make them, and then we'd sometimes roll them but there'd be these balls. And there was one lady, she ate them. She sent like her son over to buy them because she couldn't get out of her wagon. And she said she'd ate them, and she had 6. And she'd been out dancing most of the night. She'd come back, and there was only a few left. And she was like, she got her son to say, "How did he do this?" Because you know she had MS or something like that, and she couldn't. You know, she was
that was a long time ago.
Last festival, she was.
How long ago was that?
She might not live many more years after,
Yeah.
The fact is, it give her that. He was like,
Jade, how long ago was that then?
wow.
What year was
back
that?
in the,
Was that in the 90s?
yeah, back in the, back like.
Thing is, I wouldn't be surprised if she had.
Sugar. I don't eat
We
sugar,
took a
and I
big
don't
tart
eat
that I
biscuits.
bought for 40 quid and stretched it out and just had some poles in it, and we had some hangings down and a
Right.
gas cooker, and I took it all in one car, and I made this out of there, and we just took it out.
Portable
give it-
medicine
give
making,
it
except I wouldn't do it with sugar. Sugar
One
is
car.
like,
You turn up with one car, that's all you need.
I've basically got a phobia about sugar because it makes me so ill. So I've gone to a lot of effort to learn how to make cannabis edibles without sugar. Things like rice syrup, date syrup. You can buy this thing called Sweet Freedom, which is condensed apple and grape juice.
I remember I was quite young then.
Yeah, that was in the 90s.
I don't eat sugar now much, but
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I mean, it's interesting, Sarah. I was actually going to ask you that. Like, what would you recommend for somebody that was looking for like a quick, effective method for ingesting cannabinoids that was also kind of like palatable? I'm aware that factors of what they're looking for, all these kind of things.
that's a alcohol.
Yeah.
Well,
don't
alcohol
know.
gets it in your bloodstream quick.
If
but
you've got organ failure and you want to heal that, alcohol's bad, right? But if the medicine ain't quite working, alcohol and cannabis gets into the organs.
it is quicker when it's heated
It gets
in alcohol.
in, it pushes it
but
in.
Again, I don't drink alcohol.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's good. I wouldn't advise it for anybody with really bad kidneys from alcohol abuse. But then again, if the cannabis ain't working to get in there to cure the cancer or whatever's got all the problems, alcohol will help.
Well,
bizarre as it seems.
If the cannabis isn't working, then you need raw as well, and you need suppositories as well. Because if you've got something really serious like a terminal aggressive cancer, you would need oral, rectal, and raw juice as well.
And alcohol to get it into.
I wouldn't use alcohol. No, not if you're terminal. No, not end stage. No way.
Not end. Well, I kind of
for anybody that was just, I was meaning kind of like sensitive.
Trying to get a tincture of alcohol is thousands of years it's been used.
Jade's right. Tinctures have their places. I'm just particularly sensitive to alcohol and sugar. It makes me really ill. I can't.
To be honest, you can kind of supplement that for people that are sensitive to alcohol. You could have kind of used coconut oil. I think coconut oil with a little bit of maybe soy oil.
I'm sensitive to coconuts.
That won't do the organs. That won't do the same thing.
No.
It won't get it in as quickly.
No, it won't. Sorry, I've had a drink as well, so you can tell.
That's all right. That's fine.
Basically, Jade's more into his alcohol than me. That's for sure. I make tinctures. I've been making my own alcohol and distilling for about 15 years now, but I rarely drink it. I do make tinctures. A quick way to get something inside you really is to raw juice or smoothie the raw plant. But if you haven't got that, then
here's the one who makes mushroom tincture. She makes mushroom tincture, and she's trying to say it.
Yeah, okay. Mushroom tincture is amazing.
Why does it get in so fast?
Yeah, Jade's right. Alcohol can be a good, really useful carrier. And especially when it's heated, it goes in even more quickly. I would say hash bang is a great way to get something in you quickly. Use a plant milk that you are tolerant to, and an oil that you're tolerant to. For example, I don't know. Anything you can use.
Water soluble cannabis is the way forward, isn't it?
Yeah, I haven't managed to make it water soluble yet, though. You need an ultrasound machine. We haven't done that yet, have we? We haven't got an ultrasound machine. Anyway, I don't. So basically, I would love. There's more equipment I'd like, and you know, like Jade says, if it's water soluble, it's easier to absorb. It's absorbed more quickly. So something I would love to try.
Also, something I'd love to learn about is I was talking to somebody else about it the other day, and he was super intelligent. He knew all the insides of the. He could tell you the number. It was bizarre. It was like talking to a computer that knew. It was like he'd done cannabis and stuff. I've forgotten what I was saying now.
Interestingly, actually, just talking about like the intricacies of knowledge and stuff like that. You mentioned Gary Yates earlier, Sarah. What were you doing last year? Because my intention is to email him in the next week or so. Hopefully, he'll be up for coming on.
Oh, he's a great bloke, isn't he? Jade's met him. He's really lovely, and he's totally great. Yeah.
Sorry, we got a cat here.
That's all right. That's okay.
Crucial cat grooming, which is really important. It has to be done.
Carry on, Sue.
Okay, Gary Yates. Yeah, he's great, and he's. We did this. Well, he really helped me. I get so frustrated with the fact that nobody really knows about low temperature oil that Jade taught me, and also about the raw thing that I've got into. Basically, I wanted to do this presentation, and like I said, part of it was because I thought if I do get busted, I can use it as evidence. This talk that was like 30 to 40 minutes, and I approached Gary to collaborate with me on this talk at the Analytical Cannabis Expo because Gary's really, basically I had loads of data to present and I wanted to make graphs. I'd already asked Gary to help me make some graphs before doing the presentation, and he'd done such a good job. I thought he's really skilled at graphics and stuff. So basically I wanted him to help me present a bit about the oils I make and the levels of cannabinoid plant acids in them and the temperatures. Basically, I wanted to call it Cannabinoid Plant Acids Effects, Methods, and Myth Busting, because I wanted to go into the effects it gives me, the methods I use, and the myth busting I run out of time for, but it's actually the most important bit in some ways, and that's how stable the plant acids are. And at the moment, I'm trying to get together some lab tests to send off to show, for example, when you cure weed and you've got it curing for a year, it still contains cannabinoid plant acids. It won't if it's THC, because THC degrades much more quickly than CBDA. I haven't done any tests yet on CBGA, but this was the really crucial bit was, for example, my oils. I've got an oil, the one I was telling you about, the 16.7% CBD, 20% CBD and 9% THC. That's been in my kitchen mostly for the last 4 years. And I got it tested 4 years ago, which is how I know those percentages. And I've got some of this oil left. I haven't used it all, and I'm going to send it off and see how much CBDA is left after 4 years, mostly in my kitchen.
That's phenomenal. I love that. I'd love to see the response to that.
Yeah, well, I wanted to actually get some lab tests together and go into that in more detail, because during the talk that Gary helped me with, I just ran out of time. I've got to be honest, I didn't prepare properly. I said like every third or fourth word. There was things that weren't great about it, and there you go, I'm saying again. I would like to do something more about the myth busting bit, about the cannabinoid plant acid levels, and concentrate, because the trouble is I'm too close to it and I can't see the wood for the trees sometimes, because I have to be good at so many different things, like growing, extracting, distilling, even though you can now buy oil, blending,
Buy alcohol,
making probiotic food and soil so that I can make nutrient dense food and medicine. I don't always manage that, and sometimes I have to buy soil, but there's so many things that I have to do to produce this, that when I originally sent Gary my the presentation I'd written, it contained like too many subjects. It was too much. And
you do one where Candid Man meets up with Peanuts and goes to Stonehenge, and Peanuts has overalls and he's got long dreadlocks.
I think you're thinking of Charlie Brown, the cartoon character. Anyway,
no, it's not Peanuts.
Yeah, so I have to specialize in loads of different things, which is really difficult. And as Gary pointed out, it's just it was too much information and too many different subjects. So he managed to edit my words and get it more in a presentable form, which made it tolerable to listen to, really. But I would like to concentrate more just on the lab tests for the myth busting bit and write something. I'll probably get Gary to help with it and do something this year on it. I'd like to get some lab test results. The cat's complaining because Jade stopped stroking her. So that was the presentation is available online still, but you have to register for the Analytical Cannabis Expo. And interestingly, one of my friends on social media didn't want to do this because they are wary of the pharmaceutical industry, and I was for a long time, because when I stopped dihydrocodone, I stopped an 18-year dependency. My God, the symptoms were horrendous, and they went on for 4.5 years. So they obviously got better. They're only horrendous for a short while, but
that's excellent. I'll put that link up to your talk in the description for anybody that's needing it.
Yeah, well, like I say, you have to register, and one of my friends didn't want to, and she was like, "You do know this is sponsored by I can't remember. It's basically sponsored by a vaccine manufacturer."
Mhm.
And I haven't yet explained to her that, as I said to you earlier, pharmaceuticals in the short term can be life-saving in combination with cannabinoids. They've saved my life twice, and you cannot discount all pharmaceuticals. And what I'm passionate about is, if I ever get the chance, I would love to actually work with pharmaceutical companies to develop emergency medicines that contain good ratios of good cannabinoids. Like, there are some cautions to be had with cannabinoid plant acids, like CBDA can be too mentally energizing, but that's only in its extracted form. This is complicated, but in its raw form,
Can you make a
it
cure
seems
for not
completely
having
safe.
free festivals anymore, please?
What was I saying? Yeah, basically, its raw form, CBDA and CBGA are don't seem to have any adverse effects, really.
Right.
But when they're extracted, that changes. There's something so complete and medicinal about the raw plant. It's hard to put it into words, really. Like, if you try eating the raw flower, oh my God, the effect is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, smoothies are great.
Yeah. In fact, I do smoothies now instead of raw juicing, because I used to raw juice partly to get a concentrated, nutrient dense, small amount of nutrients in a small amount of liquid, because I couldn't tolerate much juice and I couldn't cope with the fiber. But now I can. I'm healed enough to cope with a lot more fiber in my digestive system, and I'm just mad about smoothies now.
Along with chaga, lime and
reishi,
reishi.
yeah, medicinal mushrooms, psilocybin. There's so many things that work well with cannabinoids. I mean, I've got a medicine box here that I'll just quickly show you, but it's not very clear to see. But I've got a huge amount of different psilocybin, CBGA, THCA, THC.
That's like the alchemist toolbox.
Also slippery elm powder and some
I
clay.
made a getter box with a lock on it.
Quite right.
It's professional.
Yes. Well, it's safer because there's actually
it's nothing to do with that. Just
Well, actually, no. On that subject, we
have visitors and things, and it's locked.
No,
up,
I do feel duty bound to point out, when I was saying earlier, because I'm going to have to finish in a minute, so it would be good to say this before we finish. That
certainly.
I mentioned psychosis, and I said that doctors are scared of cannabis because they believe it's going to give you psychosis. Well, there is a very small percentage of the population which have a genetic predisposition to psychiatric mood disorders, like schizophrenia, bipolar. Basically, they are susceptible to psychosis from THC, and it's important we don't gloss over this.
In their vulnerable stages.
Yeah.
Body with mental illness goes through different stages, and
4 times a year they reckon it's a real big help for them people. 4 times a year.
Okay, well, we know once it's not a good help.
It is. If they could only have it like a tiny amount 4 times a year,
it depends what you mean by tiny
I mean, to
amount.
stop them going one way, and
anyway, what I'm saying is that there is caution to be had with THC, and this again is another important reason why we need the raw plant. It's far more balanced, and again, this is the killer about prohibition. It is literally killer, because vulnerable teenagers, say you're 12 and you're going through puberty and you're suffering from anxiety and depression, and you're trying to self-medicate, all that is available to you is alcohol, tobacco, or high THC. You can't go out and score high CBD. It just does not exist, and it bloody should, and or 1-to-1 even. How many people could prevent going into a full-blown mental health issue, a serious illness? How many people could have had that prevented if it were not for prohibition, where they could have gone out and accessed high CBD and there was more education about it? I mean, Thailand recently decriminalized cannabis, and there were some members of the public who weren't happy about it because it was done without education. I do think education is really important. It's important to let vulnerable people know that there are different ratios. So say you suffer from anxiety, maybe you'd be better off with, or you have a psychiatric mood disorders in the family, maybe you'd be better off going for a CBD dominant strain and just seeing how you get on with it. Of course, there's many different types of anxiety, and I should point out that THC can be great for anxiety. I use it myself for anxiety. This is how complex the plant is, and how education and human trials are so badly needed. It's kind of heartbreaking that we're stuck in this kind of dark ages.
There's blood markers in there.
Yeah. That was brilliantly said, Sarah, honestly. I mean, I know you're going to have to go, but I mean...
you know about food markers, though, don't you? Food
Jade
markers
is talking about
and
microbes,
blood markers.
I think.
No, you've got blood... For each different type of food, you have blood markers and food markers. And the Japanese have done... It took them 20 years of having 100 people on it, whereas in this country, we just don't care.
You're talking about food groups for blood types, are you?
Yeah. Okay. Which is, I wonder how many of these markers are in different types of cannabis, and how we could help different people with different markers. And this is the real science that we need.
What I'm saying is that some types of cannabis may be suited to,
different
more types of blood
people,
group or something.
Nationality.
There are scientists studying this and studying.
Well, it's been done. It's just we're.
It's essentially the subjectivity of the endocannabinoid system you're dealing with. Really, the subjectivity is so diverse.
What I mean is, it's so complex because there's so many things to consider. This is why education is so important, and I do understand those people. It's
not at all.
Important point. I think that some of these, so I totally get the people in Thailand who were upset about the way it was decriminalised. I thought it was fantastic it was decriminalised. It made me really happy. But I do get that if you're the parent of a vulnerable child or a vulnerable teenager, suddenly it's criminalised. Where are the education classes in school telling preteens and teens about CBD and THC and CBG, and how CBG and CBD are antipsychotic, and THC can, in vulnerable individuals, which are only about if we didn't have prohibition and we had proper studies into this, I'm pretty sure the levels of incidences with psychosis and levels of incidences of psychosis in cannabis users would be the same as alcohol users, because there have been studies done into the incidence of psychosis in long-term alcohol users in other countries, and it was around 4%. And the studies done in this country that say that cannabis users, 6% suffer from psychosis, but that's with prohibition. And the alcohol, can you imagine if alcohol was still prohibited and those vulnerable teenagers, they can only buy some high percentage thing that's been distilled in my kitchen, not lab tested or not properly filtered even. So what I'm saying is, if we had equal studies that were properly true and unbiased, cannabis and alcohol and cannabis and psychosis, I'm pretty sure the levels would be the same.
Yeah, I fully agree. But let's say, just essentially the last thing we'll say before we go, for anybody that's listened to this already, but if they were in a position where they were like, I'm really uncertain about cannabis and this kind of thing, what advice would you give them if they're hesitant about engaging with cannabis for Crohn's disease? What would your advice be?
I'd probably say grow hemp, CBG, and start taking that raw. But if you're too scared to do that, contact your local cannabis club for advice and help. And you should get some sort of help with that, basically. I did want to do a website about cannabis and Crohn's and other illnesses, but I just never had the time really, but maybe one day. But until then, just go and grow some CBG. It's hemp. Seedsman website does a strain called CBG #1 that's around 9% CBG. That's really nice. I use it. It's dead easy to grow because it's hemp. If you're worried about the neighbours, go and talk to them and tell them it's hemp. And say you're doing it for your Crohn's. And if, like I say, if you can't go there, just contact your local cannabis club, because there's a lot of compassionate people out there who will help you.
I'll put the website for the UK Cannabis community in the link for the description box below. Sarah, this has been an absolute blast. I've really enjoyed it. It'd be great to catch up at the end of the year and just see how you're getting on. Nice one. Cheers. Yeah, good luck with it. Yeah, I can't wait to see the latest. When you in October. Is it October when you're going to start it?
And hashish is still medicine.
Yeah,
you eat it.
Totally. Well, you've mentioned hashish, so one of the episodes, October is going to be when season 3 starts. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm working on the movie, and the movie will be ready by July. It'll be ready by July. And just you're mentioning hashish there, man. I'm going to put an episode in which is called Hashashin. Roughly, I might call it that, might not, but the basis of it's going to be based in like assassins. You know, when it's talked about, they used to use cannabis, and so Donnie and CANNAMAN are going to be dressed up because they're going to have it's all going to be like Assassin's Creed. They're going to I'm going to have to draw all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's that. You know, it'll be interesting to just put them in different positions. But yeah, let's say I'll let you go, and this has been an absolute blast. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Well, thank you. And yeah, we'll have to catch up later in the year.
Definitely.
About butting in, but it's nice to talk to you anyway. And
no, it was very relevant, and I'm glad you did. Thanks very much. Yeah. And the thing is, you're an absolute superstar. You're mentioned on numerous occasions as
I wouldn't be here without him, to be honest.
Exactly, man. So honestly, it's perfect that you came in, mate.
It's quite fitting. It's quite fitting.
Exactly, because you let's say Sarah had mentioned you on several occasions, just the amazing stuff you'd been doing. So yeah, it was perfect you popped in, because I'm sure the viewers will be like, who is this guy?
Exactly. yeah, they probably were. Yeah, he sounds like quite said he needs a medal, really.
Honestly, you should be, but you should be extremely proud of yourself, because let's say it's
just a chillum will do, you know.
Yeah.
I'm hitting a chillum, I'm happy.
Quite right. But no, let's say once the movie's over, I'd be delighted to see what you think. And thanks very much for your time, Sarah J. This has been brilliant.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks to Sarah for giving me her time, and thanks to you for sticking around until the end of the video. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the content. I'll see you next time.